Hi, welcome to Shaky Sports Journeys. I hope you're all doing well. Interesting chat today. I have a gentleman with me today. He's been involved in cricket in Scotland for about the last 15 years, involved in a cricket club over in Edinburgh called South Edinburgh. As well as that, had a fairly decent stint in the Cricket Scotland board. So I say hello today to Paul Reddish. Paul, how are you?
Hi, Kazim. I'm good. Good to speak to you.
Good to speak to you too, mate. Paul, I'm going to get straight down into an important question. Bit of an elephant in the room just now. And I pose that question to you. Is cricket in Scotland at national levels, club level, etc., institutionally racist?
Yeah, well, look, I think the important thing people to understand here is that, first of all, they've got to understand what institutional racism is. And when they understand what institutional racism actually is, then it's undeniable for me that the answer to the question is yes. But let's talk about what it is so people can understand that, because it's quite explosive for a lot of people. It's become, a really big accusation that people can't get their head around. But at its simplest level, what institutional racism means, or systemic racism, or all of these other different types of terms that are out there, is that if you're part of a system of things that happen, the way in which that system is set up means that if you are from a certain type of background, you get less opportunities, and or the experience is different, it's inferior. So if that is true, then that is effectively an institutional or a system creating discrimination and racism. And that exists everywhere in society, including cricket. And the only places where it really doesn't exist is where they've actually done the work to address it. And I think that's the important point I would make about cricket. There's been quite a bit of work on inclusion, and how do we include more people in the game, but that's based on sort of how do we bring people in. It's not about their experience. It's not about accepting the things that happen that put them in a different place, and until we start to look at that really uncomfortable problem, discrimination and racism will continue to exist in cricket in Scotland, in other aspects of life in Scotland. But the thing that we have control of people in the sport we love, is cricket. And we've got an opportunity now with all the people that have come forward, yourself, Majid, and others who have been brave and highlighted this, to go into that uncomfortableness and actually address it and take some actions that improve things.
Okay. Paul, give me some examples, please, of institutional racism that you have seen firsthand. And I'm talking at national kind of setup levels and also at club level. Please give me some examples.
We've got, and again, I think when people think of racism, they immediately think of things like the P word that came out with Azim Rafiq, and abusive racial slurs and things like this, and that is unquestionably racism. But there's all sorts of other types of things that can and do happen every day and every week that lead and contribute to this problem. I've heard things like, they don't play the game in the right spirit, said about all Asian or mostly Asian teams. I've heard things like, well, in games sort of down in the lower leagues, you tend to umpire yourselves. I've heard things said like, well, you're just going to have to bowl them out, lads, because there's no way that they're going to give any LBWs. The insinuation that you cheat if you're an Asian player. I've heard, and then you think about the sort of things in the system that we do as clubs, right? So, traditional end of season dinners where you put wine in front of people, when you've got people who alcohol is forbidden in their religion. If that's your awards thing at the end of the year to reward all those people, and you sit and there's alcohol within 2 feet of them, is that creating an inclusive environment where you can celebrate your entire year as a season? So, now I've given 3 or 4 examples there at a club level. I could have given 84, 184, because these things happen all the time, and we know they do, and we call them out at an individual level, but we're not addressing the systemic reasons behind them and taking the action. At national level, I've got less examples because I'm not as involved at national level. My involvement is in the grassroots side, but I can talk about things like at the small level things I've been on. Think back to Majid and the whole situation with Majid, for example, at the World Cup. I wasn't at the World Cup. I wasn't in Australia. I don't know what was said, but I do believe that Majid would have suffered racial discrimination on regular basis throughout his career. So I can absolutely see how he would feel like that at that point in time and send that tweet. Because emotionally, if you had to put up with that your whole life, then you're holding that, right? And some people hold it and never say it, and some people can't hold it and they have to say it at points. So that's the reality of, I think, being an Asian player in this game and many other walks of life. You carry these things all the time. And Majid said it out loud. Now, people will have their views on whether or not Majid sort of said that out loud. But if I think back to that incident, it's for me, it's the reaction we have around race. Okay, and we have to recognize if somebody calls something out like that they've had all of those experiences, and the most appropriate reaction is to listen, not to overreact, and to emotionally react, or many of the other things. One of the things I only spoke to Majid for the first time a few days ago. Never met him before. And one of the things I learned from that conversation was that when he flew home from the World Cup, nobody was there to meet him at the airport other than the press, and that makes me really sad. And I think about that whole episode. It's not about whether or not that particular issue was racism for me in that sense. It's the reaction that went after, and the fact that people weren't willing to listen, and that they just, almost had that sort of knee-jerk reaction to being accused of being racist, led to some things that lacked in duty of care.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. You've just tweeted from a World Cup. I don't think there was anything illegal in that. He spoke how he felt. Put on a flight within a couple of hours, 24-hour flight from Australia to Glasgow. Would that not be classified as negligence? That nobody from an organisation had the duty of care to meet him at the other side?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I would go that strong, Kazim, but I can tell you now, I don't think it's great, and I think the handling of the situation, on hindsight, when I look at it in that sense, wasn't great. And I just want to reiterate the key point in this for me, which is this is about how we, as people that don't suffer racial discrimination, and can't know what it's like on a daily and a weekly basis to be on the end of some of these things that I've just spoken about all of the time, and we can't appreciate what that feels like. We can't overreact in these situations. You can't take it personally. We can't be going, oh, we've been called out as how dare somebody. These can't be our reactions, and then we can't let that lead to our actions. And I just, if I think about that whole situation, in most circumstances, of course, you would expect that even if that person has done something that in other people's eyes they shouldn't have done, you still got to look after that person that's involved in the situation. And I don't think enough of that was done at the time. And I think this is at the root of our problem, right? People are uncomfortable about race. They're uncomfortable about talking about it. They're uncomfortable about being called out on it. And we've got to get past that uncomfortableness and not let it cause overreactions like that then lead to actions that in my view, probably not quite right. So there's a lot of learning in all of this, and this is just what we've got to open up as a sport, right? It's these things have happened, and now you're in a position where the likes of yourself and Majid are speaking out, and that's incredibly brave of you. There, you know, I know from the conversations I've had with other people, there are many, many more people that feel similar experiences. So I just feel as somebody who cares about this, and people know I care about this. People in and around the circuit know I've been talking about this, and not just race, but gender as well, and the journey that we've got in the game about equality for women. You know, we've got a lot of work to do, and I've been saying that for a long time. And actually, what you've done by being so brave, and what Majid's done, is give us an opportunity to shift the conversation from, you know, iterative inclusion to actually looking at the problem that's in plain sight that we've not been able to get to yet, and accept that there is absolutely a problem around discrimination and racism in our sport across different levels. And there's, you know, and that acceptance is critical. We have to do that first. We've got to accept there's a problem. We don't need to set something up to explore if there is a problem. There is a problem. What we need is to work through what we now need to do to address that, so that cricket can be better than society. And, you know, these things do all exist everywhere in society, but cricket should be better. You know, we should make cricket a safe place for people to be able to enjoy their sport.
My next question for you, Paul. Do we need a full independent institutional investigation into institutional racism to get to that point, so we can actually tackle things and move forward?
Well, I think the key point here, first of all, is about trust, right? There's absolutely no question that if you go around and talk to people in and around the game, you know, that one of the reasons that people are worried about coming forward is there's a bit of a lack of trust there at the moment. You know, it's like, well, if I come forward, will anything happen? Or if I come forward, will there be consequences for me? Or, you know, or if I come forward, are people going to, you know, assassinate my character in some way and go, oh yeah, but, you know, they're saying this, but really they're like this. So we've got all of these worries, and there's a lack of trust in sort of, you know, official bodies, if you like.
So does that, so the lack of trust is there. It's not an easy thing to gain trust again. This has been going on for years, as you said, you know, we're talking for, so again, does that not mean we need an independent investigation?
So that's what I was coming on to. So I've got taking the two bits that you've said, independent investigation. So the independent bit is important because, you know, we have to find mechanisms for people to feel safe about coming forward and discussing their experiences, discussing what's happened, and actually being able to put forward solutions as well. So the independent bit is important because that's the bridge to start building trust. I don't think you can expect people to just sort of put their hand up to their local regional association or to their government. I mean, some people might, but I think most people are a little bit...
Judging from what I've seen online, even as far as last night, even the night before, I don't think there's much trust from minorities towards some of these other you know, boards, etc., around cricket in Scotland. So again, why I've been on record as saying that I think it needs an independent investigation. Do you think that?
Yeah, so I think I think we need an independent body but what I want to get at is this investigation bit. So I don't want an investigation into whether or not racism exists, because I think, I absolutely believe it does. And I think we can take a step beyond that in what we do next. So it's like, the idea that we would have an investigation to see if there is a problem is pointless. We just need more people to step up and talk about this and say, look, there is a problem. You know, the idea that we would need an investigation, that's almost like we're trying to sort of do some independent thing to justify the fact that something might exist. We know it exists. Hold on, the investigation bit, this is what I think needs to happen. I think the actual individual experiences need looking at and investigating. And the thing that absolutely needs to be done is action needs to be taken. So we need to accept there's a problem. And then we need independent voices in this to start talking about the changes that need to be made in order to deconstruct the bits of the system that lead to racism and discrimination. So that's where I'm at with it. I just, you know, I'm a little bit worried that we might end up spending 2 months doing something that pops up at the end that says what the investigation has found is that there is racism. We already know that. So
I guess we do know that, but we maybe don't know the extent of it. My feeling is that it needs to be a full independent investigation because the trust is not there. And what's 2 months when we clearly are talking about the fact that institutional racism has been existing for a long period of time. So in the scale of that, what is 2 months, Paul, to find out how serious the problem is and then move forward? You can't really, if we manage to find out that racism exists, will we really understand to what level? Because I've only educated myself recently on what institutional racism is. I didn't really know the meaning of it. So do we not need somebody to look at this and provide a report that then action can be taken off of that report?
Yeah, I mean, look, do you know what? Listening to your talk, let me tell you where I'm at on this particular point. It's actually not for me to say, right? And what I mean by that is if you feel that's the case, and other people in the game, Asian players feel that is the case, that is absolutely what should happen. And I think that's the key thing about this is, you asked my view on it. My view is, I think we just need to accept there's a problem and get on with taking action. But if your belief, and other Asian players' belief in the game is, well, we can't jump to the action. We've actually got to explore this a bit more and see the extent of it. That's absolutely what we should do. Because the most important thing about this is the people that have suffered this over the years have to have a voice and a say in this on what happens next. So genuinely, my opinion doesn't matter. What matters is your opinion and the opinion of all the people that have, and if the belief is that that's the next step that's needed, that will get my full backing. Absolutely. Because it's about listening now, and it's about understanding what people want to happen next.
What's your reason for speaking openly on this subject today?
I spend my whole life in this with my day job, right? In terms of, working with communities, the inequalities that exist all the time, and it's been a difficult journey for me in that, because I've had to accept that, I've had to embrace my own learning, right? So I would consider myself fairly progressive, and somebody who, if I saw racism in plain sight, I would call it out. And I've always done that. I've always done that. I've always had a good, strong moral compass, good ethics, I think. And these things are important. I've always done them. But I've learned over the years, as I've been working in the charity sector, that what systemic discrimination and racism looks like, and how that hides in plain sight, and how it's really difficult to put your finger. It exists, but
it's hard to like my assumption was it has to be like a racial slur.
That's it.
Dead at you. It's not really the case.
So I've learned.
Representation is quite key in this as well.
Yeah.
I would have thought.
Yeah, so I think so. Now this is what I've learned. So I've learned that it's not enough just to personally call things out. I've learned that what you need to do is have a really good look at the systems that are involved, and what's that. When you look at that system, what's it saying to you? Well, if I look at our system, I see inadequate representation at all levels. So I don't, I'm talking about right from sort of the boards that control each of the institutions, right the way through our coaching structures, our disciplinary panels even. If you look at all of the touch points of cricket where decisions are made that impact people, they are not representative. And that, I think, is a huge problem that we need to address. And I talked about moving to action. One thing that I think we need to do as an absolute priority is look at that representation in all of these different areas and positions and start to address it. And that's not going to be easy because of the other issue just described, which is trust. People don't want to put their hand up to be involved in boards or committees or umpires or disciplinary panels because they don't trust a lot of the systems that are involved. So we've got to find a way of unlocking the trust so that people can are willing to come forward. And then it needs to not be tokenism, in the sense that, it's not about having, different faces on different panels. We've then got to ensure that those voices have an equal say in different aspects of the running of the game. And we've got, and then the other thing is around learning. We've all got to reframe our learning around the different things that we might do that have unintended consequences around racism. So the dinner is the classic example. Now, our club, we scrapped the dinner. We've gone to a fun day at the end of the year, and we do awards. It's much more inclusive. It involves, the men's section, the women's section. It doesn't have like alcohol on the edge of a table. It's we bring the juniors along.
And just on that, look, other people's view would be, well, they like to drink. So is your suggestion is that people that want to have a drink, they can do that, but maybe just not be in people's faces and just respect their differences a little bit. So that's a healthy way that you're doing it.
That's absolutely it. It's about personal choice, right? And that's the key thing with all of this. It's about, you being able to do what's comfortable to you, but also respectful of others. And that, and just being able to just ask yourself those two things in all of the things you do. And so think about something like an awards thing. I know I keep picking on that, but it's quite an important thing. It's the thing that marks your club at the end. It's the thing that celebrates the thing that you all do together. So it is the most important thing to be inclusive, because it marks the end of that. So and now that's different from as a group of pals that like a drink. You can't go to of course you can go to the pub as sort of 5 or 6 of you as pals to go and have a drink if that's what you want to do. But when you're doing things formally as a club and all these sorts of things, you've got, you have to be much more thoughtful about the environment that it creates, and how is it inclusive to everybody that needs to come forward.
Yeah, no. What's the end? What does this need in an ideal world? Being somebody who's, as you say, somebody that is passionate about this.
Yeah.
Neither of us are out to try and ruin Scottish cricket. We're very passionate about Scottish cricket. What does it look like? Let's say we get an independent investigation. Let's say that we have to hear some harsh truths, as Sue Strachan said on TV, that we're going to have to listen. It's not going to be all nice. What does it look like when we change things coming out the back?
Okay. Well, look, one just on Sue first. I will mention that there are some good people in Scottish cricket that can help us lead through this, and Sue's one of them. I agree. She's got a good heart. She's got great ethics, and she's going through her own learning on this, as we all are, around what's actually happening, and she's going to learn as she goes and whatnot. But I trust Sue to and
likewise. I say that I very much back you up on that. I 100% trust her, and I know her intentions are in the right place.
But in terms of actions, if I think about it, the first thing we need to do is accept there's a problem. The second thing is, I think it's what you have done and what Majid has done is incredibly brave. And then what I've done today, and the reason I've done this is, what I don't want is this just to be two people talking and there be the opportunity to pile in on the two of you. It's not about the individuals. It's about the bigger issue of racism that exists, and being able to sort of tackle it. So it needs other voices. So I want to add my voice into that today, and I want to encourage others to.
I commend you. Just before you get there, I commend you for that, and I really respect you for that, because this has been an issue that I've seen firsthand all my days. People, and one form of racism doesn't cancel out the other. I don't keep referring to white people like where I see us all as one. You're speaking to somebody who has a white Scottish mother and a Pakistani father. So this shouldn't be about that. Is it maybe just making people feel comfortable that, it's okay to talk about these problems. It's not.
I'm not sure comfortable is the right word. I think people are going to feel uncomfortable, and that's right, because this problem has been in plain sight. But this would be my message to anybody that's not suffered racial discrimination. As somebody that's been on the street, I've felt incredibly uncomfortable in my job at times, because as I've been exploring discrimination and racial inequalities and then trying to champion it, you have to confront actually that some of your learning and some of the things that you know are can contribute to the problem. So, you know, even as somebody who's an ally and who considers themselves anti-racist, I'm still learning aspects of this whole thing. And that's what I would say to people is, it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we have to be willing to do the learning, right? We've got to be willing to sit and listen and understand things and then make changes. So that's, you know, it doesn't just need voices, it needs action. But it does need voices as well. We can't leave you out there just explaining your story. You've been incredibly brave. It needs other people like me and like others that have seen some of the things I said at the start, you know, and I know plenty of people that have seen it. So you need support in this. So it's not a couple of people campaigning. You need other people to say there is a problem. But that, you know, we're all up for addressing it and going through the bits that are uncomfortable and exploring it together so we can come through the other side and have proper representation across the game, that people can, you know, where these things happen, we've got anti-racist policies and practices across clubs and associations. So when things like that happen, we call it out, that we're being thoughtful about all of the different things that we do and how we set them up so they are inclusive. And if racism does happen, or somebody thinks racism happens, even if we don't think it is, we don't overreact. And we just, you know, we listen to that person and we understand a little bit more about where they're coming from, and try not to feel so offended by the idea that you know, things might be connected to race and racism, because you know what, they might, and we've got to listen.
Paul, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I really appreciate, and I know where you're coming. I know you're only coming from a good place, and you know, I commend you for putting your hand up and speaking of your experience that you've seen firsthand. And I think, just like you, we both just want to see a positive change, so that the next generation aren't sitting in 20 years' time experiencing the same things. And I know it's still going on because I'm seeing enough, I'm getting enough messages. So I can only speak of my experiences as I've done, which some people have suggested was a long, long time ago. You know, that was in the dinosaur years. It was actually only about 8, 9, 10 years ago. But there's enough instances coming up even now that suggest there's still very much a problem. Is there anything you've missed that you want to add there, Paul?
Just let's be brave here. That's the thing that's the message I would say to people who like would consider themselves they care about this, that might not have experienced racism but witness it and care about the sport. You know, we have to be alongside you and other people in this, and not allow, you know, when you've been through racism, there's a trauma to that, right? It will have impacted you and who you are and all of these different things, and it's asking a lot then for the same people that have experienced all of this to be the ones that go in front of the TV and all of these other things and talk about their experiences, hoping that other people are going to listen and that's going to lead to change. So that's just my message out there to anybody else that is a little bit uncomfortable at the moment and sat there on the sidelines going, what do we do? I'm not sure what to do. Do something, right? You might, it's all part of the learning. I saw something the other day about Matthew Hayden getting a copy of the English version of the Quran, right? And that's learning, right? So that is somebody.
That's learning. That was really heartwarming. It doesn't mean he needs to become a Muslim overnight, but he's learning about some different cultures.
That's it. He's a Christian, right? But he has taken it upon himself to understand and learn more about the cultures of the people that entrust him in that role. And I don't know whether that's connected to, you know, how well Pakistan have done, but I can imagine they've got huge respect for him because he's showing an interest in them and their culture, and he's made it not just about cricket. He's made it about the people, and that's what I'm saying now is those of us that have seen it, we need to make it our job to stand alongside you all now and look at what changes need to happen and do something and embrace our own learning and have a look at all the different things that we might have done and how we might do them differently to make it more inclusive, how we might call more stuff out. So I think the change starts with yourself. and then let's move to all of the other things. But it needs allies in this. It needs people that are willing to stand up now, because this sport is one that we care about. And if we really do want it to be inclusive for everyone, then that's going to require action, not just people sharing experiences. And that would be my ask. That's what we need to do together.
Well, just to add on that and just to finish on, my message would be that this is not an attack on our white counterparts. I don't even like using that term. I don't like referring to people as white all the time. You know, I've got so many people that I've got a lot of love and respect for in cricket in Scotland from white backgrounds. And I think my message to the minorities as well is yes, we need change, but I think we need to embrace that change as well, and maybe look at ourselves as well. You know, I hear often, I've had a lot of people reaching out from white backgrounds saying to me, you know, they don't want to engage with us. The Asian people want to keep themselves to themselves. You know, they speak in their own language, which, by the way, I don't think is against the law or anything. You're entitled to do that. But let's maybe be a wee bit more aware. I had a story just recently where a young white boy went to play with a group of Pakistani guys in a team and felt very excluded. That's equally got to change. It's about all together making a positive change and impact. So it's just healthy for everybody. This is not about, you know, let's give all the minorities, let's kick all the teams out and make them all made up of minorities. That's not the answer here. That's not what we want to do. We just want a balance where it's fair and inclusive for everybody. Paul, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on. And I look forward to working with you closely if the opportunity is there, and with Cricket Scotland and with anyone else. And we're both committed to helping that cause. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks, cousin.